Welcome to the Huntley Leadership Podcast, helping leaders be a positive catalyst in the people they support, the organizations they serve, and the communities they live. This podcast will make you think, laugh, and grit your teeth with new determination to make your parish or business a place of transformation, passion, and purpose. If you're still breathing, you are powered for impact. Father Dave, welcome to the show. It's a joy to have you.
It's a pleasure to be with you as well. I wish I was up there in the great north with you.
Well, it's so fun. We're just saying as we're about to hit the record button that it's so cool that we're having this conversation now because Steubenville Atlantic is about to start. Actually, Chris Bray is going to be parking in my driveway with his five beautiful girls and his wife. And they're going to make
does music, right?
He does music, yeah, and he speaks. I think he's doing the speaking, actually.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, one of the speakers at the
conference.
I
was up there a number of years ago. Honestly, maybe 10, 12, I don't know. At my age, Ron, nothing matters like that anymore. So yeah, it's great.
Well, you're welcome back anytime. I wish you were here too.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful area. I really enjoyed the conference up there, but I'm always just pretty humbled at the number of lives that are impacted by the conferences. I mean, it's not unusual to run into somebody and they said their life changed through one of the conferences. So it's a great fruit of Franciscan University.
Yeah, it's a beautiful gift to the church. And I'd love to tell you, for the listeners who might not be as familiar with Steubenville, the school itself and its history, I'd love for you to share a little bit of it, because one of the things I've been finding in the ministry work that I do time and time again, and even on the podcast, there's been so many times I've been speaking to somebody only to find out during our conversation, I graduated from Steubenville. It's like, it seems like the graduates of Steubenville are punching above their weight class in terms of building the kingdom of God.
No, I don't disagree with that. That's really such a great blessing. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about history.
Yeah, the university itself we're about 78 years old. I think our 100th or 80th anniversary will be next year. And honestly, it started in the Diocese of Steubenville, Ohio. There's a funny story about the bishop who went to the Jesuits because there was no Catholic college in the diocese, and apparently the Jesuits wanted $1 million to start a school. So he said, that's not going to work because the Diocese of Steubenville didn't have any money. So who would you go to? You go to the friars who don't have any money either. So
you know how to do things without money.
It's actually kind of a great story. There was a dinner and the mother of the provincial and the mother of the bishop got together and they said, oh, you guys should work this out. So here we are 80 years later. Wow. And it's been a great, just a tremendous blessing, I think, to the diocese. Yes, it's been a great ministry of the Franciscan friars. It's obviously I'm a Franciscan friar. We actually have part of our directive is that it'll always be a friar who will be the president of the university. I think that's important. It kind of keeps us rooted in who we are and where we came from. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. If you see dynamic things that are taking place in the church, it's not that far that you see the fingerprints of Franciscan University alumni. And I think that's part of that is because I think it's a culture that we've created. And at the heart of that is a love for the church. I mean, we have individuals who are not just doing, ministry. They're doctors and lawyers and accountants and teachers and all of this. But there is something about, somebody says it's in the water that we drink here, but it's a deep love for the church and a desire to serve the church and a desire to give back. And we see that in so many places across the United States and honestly, the world for that matter.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think every organization getting ready to celebrate the 80th anniversary, I think every organization goes through seasons of growth, seasons of clarity, seasons of struggle, seasons of learning. And I would imagine Steubenville is no different. Tell us a little bit about some of the bumpy points and some of the growth points.
It's actually quite interesting. In the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, Steubenville, it was the College of Steubenville, was going through, honestly, what lots of small Catholic schools were going through. And that is, who are we? What are we about? How are we unique? Steubenville was probably one of the more difficult times. And there was one of the residence halls was for sale. Numbers were dwindling. So Father Mike Scanlon, who had worked at the university but was not at the time was the rector of our seminary,
Mm.
they asked him about the possibility of being the president. And honestly, again, a lot of schools were closing. So Father Mike said that he didn't have this great, huge vision. This is exactly what we need to do. But he did a couple of things. He knew that while many Catholic schools at the time were actually separating from Rome and in their independence and their freedom, they kind of wanted to be on their own.
Yeah.
Father Mike had a sense that that was not the way to go. But in fact, you needed to double down. As a Catholic university, you need to have a relationship with the church. John Paul would say, literally decades later, the Catholic University should be at the heart of the church.
Hmm.
The other was Father Michael's insistence that Christ was going to be at the center of what we do.
Hmm.
So those two things, faithfulness to the church and putting Christ in the center. Over the next 15, 20 years, you really see the transformation of what is now Franciscan University of Steubenville, where I think we've created a culture here. It's not just in addition to something that we do. It's really at the heart of what we do. We talk about the core values of the university, what makes us unique. Those aren't just something we put on a wall, but they're really what we want to be able to strive and focus for. So I would say the 70s were a very rough time. A little bit later, I think in the early aughts as well, there was just, again, a questioning of direction and focus. And I actually think the 75th anniversary provided us an opportunity. I came in and as president, I've worked at the university for a number of years and then was doing some other things for my community. I came in as president in 2019. And I was actually the first alumni president. So yeah, I think it provided an opportunity to refocus on some of the things that make us unique, what we stand for, what we want to try to do as a university. And the 75th anniversary provided us a lot of opportunities. We had a capital campaign that went really, really well and provided us an opportunity to reassert who we are and what we're about and where we want to be. So I would say in your question, we're in a time of growth. We're a time of expansion, and it's just been a very grace time. Yeah.
Good for you. Now,
Yeah.
it's interesting because one of the things I've found, leadership is my passion, and Jesus and his church are my first love. And so I'm able to apply what I'm passionate about to what I love, and it's just so great. And so I coach a lot of priests and bishops, and the whole formation in leadership isn't a part of seminary training, which is fine. But tell me a little bit about like being a
I would maybe beg to differ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm being polite, okay?
I 100% agree with the first part that says that it's not a part of the formation. Whether or not it's fine, but I appreciate your sensitivity.
Yeah. Trying to be gracious as heck.
I
But
appreciate it.
but how about you though? Because being a president of a university is not a small job. Like that is like talk about a leadership role.
Yeah.
Like, nobody thinks that being a president of a university isn't a leadership role. Some people believe being a pastor of a church isn't really,
Yeah.
it's a spiritual job. It's not a leadership job. Somehow those get disconnected sometimes,
No,
but nobody
unfortunately,
disconnects that with a university. So tell me about your story of faith and growth, and then even of leadership.
Right. We actually joke when I came back at the university. The joke was that I had to come back as president because I'd done everything else on campus. But there's actually a method to the madness in that.
Yes.
And I would say my suspicion is you probably agree. There are programs that help with leadership. There are models of leadership, but my experience has been really at the base. It's a person. It's individuals that you meet that have a care and a concern for you, that are invested in your success, invested in your growth, invested in honestly sometimes something that they see in you that you may or may not actually see in yourself. So I would say that was very much the case here at the university, that I came, again, I was a graduate, and it was also my first assignment as a young priest. And fairly quickly, Father Mike Scanlon, the president I was talking about, and a couple of other people thought that I had a sense of leadership, and my experience and some of the other things that have been done would confirm that. I think leadership is really a calling. I'm always nervous about people who just step up and they say, I want to be a leader, right? And I, on one level, I appreciate that, but it's also a calling. People see the gift, see the grace, and they really build on that. so that was something that happened in my life. So when I joke about being involved in various other ministries on campus,
Yeah.
we were actually very intentional about that. And that was
Gotcha.
being able to allow myself to have different experiences in different areas in the university, different departments that really allowed me to have a broad understanding of university. I ended up going on for a doctorate. That helped as well.
Hmm.
So there was a real intention about
Doctorate
being in university.
in what?
Well, actually, I've got a doctorate in education, and I ended up getting a doctorate in law as well a little bit later.
Neat.
Yeah, so both actually, the reason I before I came to the university, I was a poli-sci pre-law major, so I always had an interest in
Mhm.
law. So I'd actually been at the university for a number of years, and I was transferred to be in charge of our seminarians, which provided me an opportunity for education.
Mhm.
My time at the university, one of the things I realized is there were a lot of questions that that need legal expertise. So
So
I
true.
ended up going on and getting a law degree with no desire to practice law, but a desire to
Yeah.
be able to learn a little bit more. That allowed me, I think, in my position now. But it's funny, Ron, because honestly, the talk when I was younger was, Father Dave's always, he's going to be the president. He's going to be the president. Well, we went through a couple of president search, and for a number of reasons, what was going on in my life, it just
Yeah.
wasn't the right time. So I thought, maybe that was not God's desire and will for me. But in 2019, there was a change here at the university in our leadership, and I was asked to put my name in the hat, and here I am. Yeah. But you're right, as far as is the leader, it's interesting. In the United States today, the average university president, the term is about 4.5 years.
Oh,
It's a really difficult job, of which the turnover rate is really, really high in college campuses today.
right. You said a few things I want to pick up on, and then I want to apply it to the church because by the time we're finished, we're going to solve all the world's problems. Does that sound like a
That's
good outcome?
we're recording this, right? This is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, just so we forget, we get lost, so we can go
Yeah,
back and
that's right.
remember
That's right.
how
That's right.
God inspired us.
Yeah.
But you said a few things I want to pick up on, and it's just so beautiful because I agree with you. I just had a conversation today with a client that I coach about that very thing. Somebody stepped up and said, "I want to be on the leadership team," and
Yeah.
it's like I don't never feel comfortable with that. It's like, no, you have to trust the process, and if you have the
Yeah.
character and you're the person that whoever's in leadership now sees, then they'll call you into that. You don't have
Right.
to
Right. Right.
you don't have to rally for yourself. You don't
Right. Right.
you
Right.
don't have to
I mean,
politic for your
put yourself in a position, succeed, do well what
yeah.
you're asked to do. Yeah.
And
The
so
scripture
that's what.
talks about.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the scripture talks about to the degree that you're faithful in small things, of the
Yes.
Lord is going to give you more. And there's something to that,
Yeah.
one ought not complain about busyness, because in some sense, that's simply the answer to a promise. The Lord says, if you're going to be
Mhm.
faithful in these, I'm going to give you more. And um, yeah, it's just the Lord is faithful. He does what he says he's going to do. And we
Yeah.
need to be faithful to that as well.
Amen. And in your situation, I love what you said that, there's been people in your life, mentors, people who saw something in you that sometimes you don't always see in yourself. But a couple of
Mhm.
things I think about with respect to that. One is there's a trust there. You trust them. They
Yeah.
see something in you. You trust them and you surrender to that with your
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
A. And,
Mhm.
and then you were developed intentionally over time because leadership was a call, and you answered the call with your yes and with your trust. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I mean, uh, leadership is a yes, and it's saying yes to it. So there are gifts that I think that are given to an individual
Mm.
that helps him or her be a more effective leader. But there's also things that you can learn. So
Yes.
that was in my own experience that, again, Father Mike saw in me and called that out. But then he also put me in positions where I would be challenged, where I would learn,
Mhm.
where I would fail, and I would
Yes.
learn from that. So it's not it's not only a natural giftedness. I think that's a part of it, but it's also an individual who's willing and humble enough. And I think you're absolutely right to trust somebody and says, okay, I believe that you have my best interest at heart. I believe
Mm.
that you have a capacity and an ability to mentor me and to lead me. And in that, yeah, the Lord can do really, really great things.
Amen. And so, if we were to bridge that from your experience and in your order and at the university to, diocesan priests, they're not they're answering a call to the priesthood, to vocations,
Right.
but that's not always a call to leadership somehow. And I'm going to need your help figuring this out because I'm thinking about it in real time. But it's missing some of the components that you just talked about, which is fine. I'm not saying it needs to have those components, but some people are saying yes to the call of priesthood without having the capacity, the mentors, the people speaking in them from a leadership capacity. And being a pastor of a parish, for the most part,
Mhm.
is a leadership role if you're the pastor. And
No,
boy,
no, that's
there's
absolutely
all
right.
those things that you talked about are not present.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Ron. I mean, the a priest, a call to priesthood. In fact, have you ever been to an ordination? It's really
Yes.
this beautiful point of the ordination where the priest or the he's a deacon, he's called forth from the community.
Mm.
A priest is called to be a priest, to be a pastor, to be a shepherd. But what is it? Literally, what does a shepherd do? He leads his sheep. So by the fact that you are an ordained priest, you are a leader. And one, I think we need to actually do a better job in our formation, in our seminary formation. But then also, unfortunately, what we see at times is the attitude among some that says, "Oh, you're ordained, your time of formation is done. You put in your time, now you're a priest." But I would say the biggest transitional date in my life was the day I became a priest. You know, and to think that I had all of the necessary skills and talents to actually do that well just by the
Right.
fact that I've been ordained is simply, it's naive. And I think that we
Mm.
do a poor job. I would say, the 5 years after ordination, there needs to be more intentional formation, more intentional mentoring, because by the fact that they're ordained and they're in public ministry, they're in leadership roles. And oftentimes we're leaving guys out there in the wind, and they're just not doing well. And unfortunately, there are many stories that would confirm
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I hear you. And one of my concerns, because sometimes people will say to me, Ron, you should be doing what you do in the seminaries. And it's like, but I don't think that's necessarily the best place for it because those seminarians need to be taught how to be an associate. And that topic never comes up. They
Mm-hmm.
never learn what it means to be an associate and how to be a good associate. And it's
No, I
literally what they're
agree.
going to be for the first 5 years. And it's never
No,
discussed.
no, there's something to that. I think a good leader is also a good follower, and
Yes.
and just that relationship that exists between the associate and the community, the parish and the associate and the priest, the pastor. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's
It's
a
it's
lot we
not
take
just
for
it just
granted.
doesn't it just doesn't happen through osmosis. There needs, you used the word earlier, Ron. You're absolutely right. Is there needs to be an intentionality. I'm very grateful in my life that there were
Mm.
individuals, priests, and honestly lay
Yes.
people that were really really good and saw in me and mentored me and called out in me. I mean, one of them was actually, for a number of, we started our conversation with youth conferences. I used to be in charge of the youth conferences, so I was the leader
Ah,
of all the conferences. But that was a layperson that reached out and actually met with Father Mike and said, "Hey, I think Father Dave would be really good at this." And again, it was one of the first times that I managed more than one person. I had to manage an
right.
office, I had to manage a calendar, I had to manage. Now, you know, I must say that when I was 18 years old thinking about being a priest, I wasn't thinking a lot about budgets, right? But as a university as a
Right.
university president, I think a lot about budgets. Um,
A lot
but
more
but
than you want to.
but the
Yeah.
point is, and this is maybe just to close this loop, is that ultimately it's the Lord's will for me. I remember I was sitting in a
Yeah.
budget meeting not that long ago, and we're trying to carve 1% off a budget. I was looking at the San Damiano cross, which is the Franciscan cross, of which you're probably familiar with.
Yep.
I was kind of frustrated. I said, "Really, Lord, is this what you have for me? This is why I got ordained." And I just sensed the Lord say yes. And honestly, Ron, it
Ah,
changed it for me. I mean, if this is what the Lord has for me, then I want to be dialed in. I want to be paying attention. I want to do the best that I can with this. And there was this moment of, yes, this budget, this meeting right now is what I have for you. Okay, Lord. Then, as you said earlier, then yes, that's what I want.
That's really neat that went to a question, and then that you received that grace in the moment of
Yeah,
hearing
yeah,
his
yeah.
answer.
It
Yep.
wasn't exactly what I expected. It's like,
Glad you
you're
asked.
right.
Yes, this
Yeah,
is what I have for you.
you're right, Dave. You should be doing something. Yeah, right. This is, but I think the call to holiness and the call, I think, to be a leader is
Yes.
just to be faithful to where the Lord has you,
Mm,
and where you've been planted and you grow there. So I think that's really
yeah.
important.
Can you share with me, this is a funny question, but I'm really excited to hear your answer, and you're probably gonna think about it
Yeah,
for a second,
careful,
but
careful,
what are
careful.
what are yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
What are a couple of things that maybe you believed when you were younger in leadership that now that you've had more experience, you look back and go, "Yeah, I've changed I've grown, and these are the 2 things that I've come to know to be true that I wouldn't have known when I started."
That's a great question, Ron. Um, I think probably the first one that comes to my mind is the burden that goes with
Mm,
it. It's a burden that I can't imagine doing what I do without faith. You know, at university, and I can't imagine actually being a university president anywhere else. That there's a great burden that goes with it. There's
mm,
a weight that goes with it. There are some that look at leadership and it's like, oh, Father Dave, you get to go to a fancy meal, or you get to go to a neat place, or you get to go to this, that, and the other. Um, okay, fine. But the reality is that and I mentioned that I came in as university president in the fall of 19, and then obviously March of 2020
2020.
was COVID. So I got to walk in just in time for that, which was fantastic, right?
Great, you have great
Um,
timing.
yeah, 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 yeah. But to that end, that there's a burden that goes with leadership, and there's a cross
Yeah.
that goes with that, and you have to embrace that. To the thought of being a leader without difficulty, without struggle, without the cross, I it's just not real. So, and I've actually seen a lot of people who struggled with that. They kind of wanted the
Yeah.
trappings of leadership and the the idealized leader glamour, which that doesn't last long. You don't have to be in leadership very long. You realize that does not last very long. So that's probably the biggest. But then
Yeah.
maybe another is this. I mean, it was funny when I was elected president. I called my mom and dad and told them, and my mom was, moms are moms. She gets all emotional. She's so excited and crying. But my dad said, your life is going to radically change, because before I came back to the university, I was doing a ministry called the Wild Goose. It was a ministry program that I started. And in that, everybody was thrilled. Father Dave, what you're doing is great. This is wonderful. But my dad was saying your life's about to change, is because you're going to have to make choices and decisions that are not going to be received well, that people are not going to jump up and down and cheer for you. And again, that it goes to part of the burden, but it also
Yeah.
goes to um, a loneliness in some ways. I've got a great team. I think one of the gifts that I have is creating a team and identifying a team.
Mm,
But push comes to shove, that decisions are mine, and so to that end, there has to be just this rootedness in who I am, and what the Lord has called me and asked me to do. Because
mm,
one of the things that I reflect on our current during COVID was everybody was saying, be courageous, Father Dave, be courageous. All that really means is they're saying, do what I want you to do, right? Because
right.
one person is saying do A to be courageous, and one person is saying be courageous, and they're diametrically opposed to one another.
And
So,
completely
ult-
convicted. Yeah.
yeah, 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 right, exactly. So ultimately, what I as a leader have to do is just be really confident in what I believe is the best path forward, and make a
Mhm.
choice, and realizing that there's doesn't matter what I do, does not matter what I do. There's going to be a population who thinks that I've done the wrong thing. So
Yeah.
there has to be a confidence in ultimately this is the path forward. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, if you I heard a guy say one time who, again, in a significant role of leadership, that's the very thing he said is leadership is lonely. And he
Yeah.
said, I would rather that somebody trusted me than somebody liked me. Now, I prefer both, but
Yeah.
if it could only be one, I want them to be able to trust me. Because if I want to be liked by everybody, I'm going to be
Oh
chasing the
goodness.
wrong thing.
No. No, you'll always be frustrated. You'll always be
Yeah.
frustrated. Yeah. Yeah.
How does that the weightiness of decisions and ultimately the end of the day you have to make them, how does that fit into working out of a team in your context? Do you how does the team influence your thinking, your discernment? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, practically is uh, I think everybody understanding the role that they have in those decisions or in that
Yeah.
process. There has to, you used the word trust just a second ago. There has to be trust, on both levels. On
Mhm.
an individual on my team that says, Father Dave, I don't think this is the path to go, but I also understand that it's your decision to make. So
Mhm.
when we come to that place that you make a decision, I'm going to be there 100% with you, and I'm going to
Mhm.
support it, and I'm going to encourage it, and so there has to be a profound trust. Actually, I think conflict is important. I'll often say is somebody needs to disagree. If everybody's seeing the same thing, that maybe we're not seeing something. So we mine for conflict and
Beautiful.
look for other ways of saying. Because my experience has often been that, particularly with hard decisions, I was going to say the more people you get, and I don't mean by like tens and twenties and thirties, but the more people in my team that are able to give an opinion, to give a thought, to be able to give a reflection,
Mhm.
to be able to debate. I always say I want to debate, discuss, and discern. Those are
Mhm.
three really important things for us. And then ultimately, my thought is at the end of that process, and a decision has to be made, um, that we've come to a place where I'm comfortable with it and my team's comfortable with it, and we're making this decision. Again, it's me. It's going to be my name on the email. It's going to be my name on the letter. But it's a group of people that have come together, and I feel confident and comfortable with that. And then they're going to support me on that as well.
So debate, discuss, and discern, and
Discern,
then
yeah,
when that decision is made, let's get behind it. And
yep,
we're able to do that when there's a high degree of trust, and we get to contribute. Yeah, I love that. It's a great principle that we can all apply. You said something, and for our listeners, I just want to point this out. Father Dave, you mentioned one thing now that you probably didn't know then, that you believe to be true, is the burden of leadership. And one of the things that I find challenging, and not that I haven't done it, but it can be so easy to be armchair leaders and criticize the daylights out of people who are in those roles of leadership
yeah, yeah.
with having very little understanding of the decisions, the weight, all the considerations that go behind making difficult decisions. And I just want that to land on our listeners, because we're all led, whether it's a politician, a pastor, a bishop, we're all led. And there's some more grace that we could probably give our leaders, because it
No,
is a
my
burden.
goodness, you are so right, Ron. You are so right. I mean, obviously, I think it's one of the horrible things about social media is that, not only everybody has an opinion, but everyone has the ability to share it with everybody. And because I've been in the position, I'll read something that somebody wrote, and they simply don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They're they make critiques, they make opinions, they make assumptions that are simply not accurate. Again, so that goes to, you have to have thick skins. Like I don't read comments on social media.
No.
I don't find it helpful. It just doesn't serve anything. But with that being said, that you have to have, a leader has to be able to have some thick skin, that everybody's going to shoot at you. They're going to have an opinion. They're going to, and again, we have to be confident at the end of the day that we've done what we felt was the best thing to do. And that's not to say that it was necessarily the best thing to do. I
Right.
think that's part of that process, is to be able to step back at the end of the day and say, okay, maybe we need to readjust. Maybe we need to look at this in another way, or look at this again. And that's not to say that we're always living in indecision, because when decisions are made, but if it becomes evident, oh, we probably didn't do the best job on that. I think that's humility demands that we are able to take another look at something.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a gold. How have you seen the mission of the university evolve or deepen during your time there? And again, I know you came in just before COVID, so that definitely would have thrown everything for a loop. But in
Yeah,
terms
yeah,
of,
it did.
yeah,
Well, yeah, maybe just to that end. So, when COVID first happened, and you had schools that were, obviously, everybody in that March sent them home, but the question was, what was the next year going to look like?
mm,
And people being laid off, and school going to online, and in the midst of that, I didn't think that was the path forward for us. But I knew that it was going to require, if kids were going to come, particularly new students were going to come, because the returning students, they knew who we were, they knew what we were like, and they wanted to be here, right? I think
right.
generally the kids wanted to be here. Um, so it's actually kind of a funny story. I get a text from a friend of mine who says, I've been thinking about this, and And what if the university did something about letting the students come back for free or something like that? And I was fairly dismissive of like, it's like, that's a nice idea, but it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Um, but but I couldn't shake it. I went to prayer and I just couldn't shake this. I said, well, what would this actually look like? So I tried to find somebody who thought it was a horrible idea. So I went to the finance person saying, clearly he's going to say,
Yeah, if anybody's gonna say no.
right, right. And he said, Father, there may be something to this. So bottom line is we created a program, what we called Step in Faith. And it was an invitation to new students to come to the university for the first semester without paying. We felt that in order to stay open, just being together was going to be a step in faith. So if the university was going to invite, people to make this step, then we were going to have to make this step with them. So it was, going back to the whole burden of it. I mean, I got emails that said, if you're crazy, what are you doing? The kids should be at home. They shouldn't. I mean, emails, if kids die, their blood is on your hand, Father. And
Oh,
but we were just very convicted and convinced that the best place for young people, particularly in the craziness of that time, was to be together. So we created, we did the best we could do of being safe and this and the other. Thank the Lord, by nobody ever got seriously sick, but it was contrarian to what a lot of people were doing. But ultimately, I thought it was the right thing to do, and part of this is the grace that's come about from that. It's been in the last 6 years that I've been here. Every year, we've had more students than we had in the past. We've
really?
had more graduates than we've had in the past. I mentioned that we had a capital campaign. Our goal was $75 million. We ended up
Yep.
at $126 million. And I think part of that is that
Congratulations.
people, like, I think people are inspired by individuals or institutions operating in faith. So one of
Amen.
the things that I shared with them is that this step in faith that we make isn't a one-time event, but it's how I want to operate.
Mhm.
It's the analogy of the Lord calling to Peter, step outside of the boat and walk on water. I mean, to be able to walk on water on one level is one of the most frightening things, but it's also one of the most exhilarating, thrilling things and again, I realize that this is uncomfortable, but to put yourself in a position where you have to count on the Lord
Right.
and trust in the Lord, because we are so accustomed to creating a world that basically, if we're honest, we control it.
Yeah.
And actually put yourself in a place where you give up that control, you give up that security, and you say, Lord, we really need you to come through on this. And the
Mm.
Lord is always faithful. The Lord is always good. And that was our experience. I mean, just to finish that story, my desire, my goal, kind of thinking like, Lord, if this was what you wanted us to do, because we had to take funds from our endowment. I said, if we get $1 million in donations to help offset this, that would be great. And we ended up getting $3.5 million for people that
Wow.
wanted to help us. Again, people are inspired by institutions and individuals who are willing to step out in faith, and that's certainly been our experience at the university.
Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah,
I agree. Like faith is great until you need it.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It's easy to be self-reliant and say you have faith. It's another thing to have no idea what's gonna happen, and I could
yeah,
fail badly,
yeah.
but I'm going to say yes and trust, and that's the definition of faith probably.
Right, right, right.
It's good on you. That's beautiful, and it's so fun to as somebody being a part of a movement or something. I want to live for Christ. Like, as a Christian, I
Yeah.
want to live for Christ. I wanna be led by people who are willing to be led by Christ,
I had
and
a really cool experience during that whole process. It was just, as you remember, it was just such a crazy time. But
ugh,
one of the faculty members came in, and he'd been here probably 12 or 14 years, and came to my office. And honestly, he got kind of emotional. And he said, Father Dave, this is the first time since I've been here that I felt like we've bet on ourselves. That
mm,
because it challenged us. It in many ways, strangely enough, it drew out the best of us, right?
right,
And we were, betting that the young people would come, that their parents would come,
yeah,
that they would be inspired by what they experienced, because this would have been a horrible idea if they came for a semester and left. and said, well,
Yes.
I got my free semester. I got what I wanted. But what happened is obviously they came and they fell in love with those who weren't even sure about. We had a lot of people that semester who wasn't even sure who we were, right? I mean, we made all the
Come
news,
on.
Fox News, CNN,
Really?
everything was doing that. Yeah. So they came and they encountered the Lord in a way that they'd never had before. They encountered a Christian community that they'd never experienced before, and they said, "Okay, I want to be a part of this." That was really cool.
Oh, that's the best news ever.
Yeah, it was fun.
Oh,
It was
that
fun.
makes my
Yeah,
day. That is so beautiful. And whoever would have thought? I would never think of a university being able to have that kind of an impact, especially in that kind of a condition.
yeah,
Like, God, did he ever use that for the kingdom? And your
yeah, yeah,
guys' yes, like your discernment. Oh, that's a victory story.
yeah, yeah. It was great. It was great. I don't particularly want to go through it again, but it was great. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't blame you a bit. What
yeah.
excites you the most right now about what God is doing through the university?
It's honestly, right. It's always the same thing. It's always people. And I met with our IT staff the other day, and
Yeah.
the reality is we don't pay attention to the IT staff until something goes wrong, right?
So
And and
true, right?
and my dad shared with me a long, long time ago. He said that uh, you realize how important you are, or how important you think you are, by if you quit doing your job, what impact does that have? Well, I can
Right.
be gone for a week, and honestly, nobody knows I'm gone. The IT people quit for a week, and we've got a major problem, right? So it's always the people. It's the people that I get to work with.
Yeah.
It's the helping everybody understand that to the degree that we play the role that we've been given in the institution, that impacts kids' lives. You know,
Mm.
kids' lives, and I talk about one of the elements of highly successful people is they have the end in game, that end in mind. Well, our end game is eternal. That there are
Mm.
literally eternal consequences of young people. But I always stress that it's not just if we're doing what we're doing just for the students, which is obviously essential and key, but we're doing it for each other.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's the people that we're working with, it's the people that we're encountering and collaborating with. Um, yeah, there. This is not a stretch. There are people who their eternal destiny is dependent on uh, how we're caring for them, how we're reaching out to them, how we're loving them, how we're serving
Mm.
them, and we want to keep that in mind. That it's not just a budget, it's not just
Right.
Wi-Fi, it's not just a residence hall, but it's young people's lives and the impact that it's going to have on them.
I really appreciate your focus, Father Dave, of injecting meaning into every component of of the university, because it's so easy to take people for granted in ministry and
Yeah,
parish,
yeah,
and
yeah,
what
yeah.
you're linking their activity to purpose, and we're all in it together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not right, right. It's I appreciate what they do, but I appreciate more who they are.
Mm.
And if you see person as just the function that they do,
Mm.
that's really dehumanizing, and nobody wants to be a part of that culture. Now, that's not saying that we always get it right, right? That's
Of
this
course, of
one
course.
of the core elements, the core values of the university is conversion. And this idea of
Mhm.
conversion is this metanoia, which means that
Mhm.
it's a constant process. It's not something that merely happens once, but that we're continually, as an individual, but also as an institution, experiencing conversion. So that hopefully we're doing it better now than we did a year ago.
Right. Reminds me of a story years ago. We had an Archbishop James Hayes, and in the area that he lived, sometimes he would just take the bus to work because it was an easy bus trip from where he lived to the center. And there was a born again Christian who knew who he was, and one day he said, "Hey, brother James, have you been born again?" And his answer was, "Yes, I have, my friend, many times." And that
Oh,
whole
that's great.
metanoia, this ongoing, I just thought was the
Yeah, yeah,
best
that's right.
answer
That's
ever.
right. That's right.
Father
That's
Dave, you've
right.
mentioned your dad a couple times. He sounds like a wise man that has had a big influence on your life. Tell me
Yeah,
a bit
yeah,
about
sure.
him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my father was, yeah, my best friend, and I say that not just um, as a throwaway line, but uh, my father passed away a couple of years ago.
Mm.
So one of the things that I did is I'd mentioned already that I did a series called Wild Goose, and the Wild Goose was really focusing on the Holy Spirit. And then I did Metanoia, which was Jesus, and this last one we just finished about a year and a half ago was called My Father's Father. And it's interesting because what I speak about in this is that ultimately my father discipled me. And it's interesting.
Mm.
My computer now, because I've done this a lot, but if you Google, put in disciple children, it almost always autocorrects to discipline children.
Wow.
It's not, what does it mean to disciple? But my father was very, very intentional about discipling us, that the way that he was to be a father was ultimately to lead us to the Father. So one of the last conversations my dad and I had was that very topic, talking about, it was clear that my father was going to pass, and that he was going to be with Jesus. And my father said, and he's going to present me to the Father, right? And that's really how my father discipled us, that ultimately each one of us kids was going to stand before the Father. And my dad wanted to make sure that we knew Jesus, who was going to ultimately lead us to the Father. Wanted to try to reveal a father who was loving and kind and generous and patient. And so pretty good influence in my life. Just a great dad. But also, I mean, even in that you talked about priests, do they understand that they're leaders? Well, a father, a dad is a leader. He's a leader of his family. And that's not to say that, it's this authoritarian, I'm the leader of this family, but it's a servant leader. It's to lead as Jesus said. So, it doesn't matter. A mother is the leader as well, right? So
Yeah.
I just don't think we talk enough about what is it to be a leader and being intentional about it. And I think much of what you do is really important, Ron, is that right, you see the giftedness, that's a grace that's been given by God, but there's also some of those things that can be learned, and they can be fine-tuned, and we can get better at it. And I think oftentimes, people don't take the time, honestly, to be quiet, to be still, to be reflective. How am I doing? Am I a good leader in my family? Am I a good father? Am I a good husband? Those are questions that individuals should be asking, but we stay too busy. We don't ask those things.
Yeah. You're blessed to have your father as your father, and it sounds like you
Yeah,
take a lot of those principles into your leadership in your role as president just by listening to you
yeah.
so far. And then as you explain your dad, I'm thinking, oh, that's really
Yeah,
beautiful.
one of the lines my dad had that we all grew up with was, "We choose our joys and sorrows long before we experience them," and that's one of the things that we talk about. We had to do some budget cuts at the university, and I said, ultimately somebody has to bite the bullet on this, and because they were saying, maybe we could push it off. We can't push it off. We pushed it off for too long, so we had to make some really hard decisions. But I talked about that we choose our joys and sorrows. I said we're going to have to choose to make it difficult right now, so that in the
Mm.
future it will become better. It will become easier for us. So we choose our joys and sorrows long before we experience them. So by the decisions we make today has a profound impact about what tomorrow's going to look like.
There's something I discovered just 3 years ago. I want to share it with you and get your thoughts on it. It totally caught me off guard. I was my wife and I were in Italy and doing some vacationing, but also had some opportunity to do some ministry time. And so I was invited to speak at a parish. And so the pastor and the associate are both bilingual. And so what was going to happen is I was going to speak in English, pause. They were going to speak it in Italian, and then as soon as they stop, I'd pick up my thought,
Yeah,
and then that's not fun. It's not easy to do, but anyway,
that's
that was the
hard to.
plan. And so the three of us got together just before I was supposed to speak, and Father Anthony said to Father Rito, uh, "We don't have a word in Italian for leadership." And I'm like,
Hmm.
"What?" And like, "Well, we don't have a word for." I said, "What do you mean you don't have a word for leadership?" "Well, we used to. It was El Duce, but then Mussolini
Yeah, yeah,
kind of killed that, and
yeah.
so we can't use that word." And I said, "Well, that's literally what I'm here to talk about. Like, what are you how are you going to translate that?" And he's like,
That's
I
really
don't know. I
interesting.
guess we could use the English word leadership." And I said, "Well, people know what we're talking about." They're like, "Oh yeah," but there was a hesitation. And so I said, "Well, why are you hesitating?" And they said, "Well." when we say the English word, they just think of, you know, rich business owners who take advantage of everybody and steal all their money.
Right.
And it's
Right.
like,
Right.
well, then we can't use that word because
Yeah,
that's
that's
not what
right.
I'm talking about either. And so we had to literally redefine leadership through the lens of Jesus in order to then talk about it. And I had to build them up on that so that we could agree, so that when they heard me
Mhm.
say the word, this is what it means.
This is what it means. That's really fascinating.
Fast, and that's Italy, right? Italian, that's where Rome is. And then and then I tell that story, the people, my Spanish speaking friends are like, "Yeah, we don't really have a word for leadership either." I'm like, "What?" And then my Asian friends are like, "Yeah, we don't have a word for that in Chinese either." And I'm thinking, no wonder as a church we're
That
not
we're not
able to
communicating.
talk about it. We don't have a language.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And that's why I'm so excited about Pope Leo, because he's from America, he understands the word.
Yeah.
And how that translates to Rome and how they could develop a theology around leadership. I don't think we have one. What are your thoughts on that?
No, no, it's probably fair that we don't have a theology on leadership. You know, one of the things that with the new campaign that we did at the university is really opened up with a great intentionality on leadership, entrepreneurial, and business. But what we decided to do is we made it an interdisciplinary program because my
Mhm.
experience has been those, partly because of our alumni, the greatest entrepreneurs were not business majors. Rather,
Right.
they were people that had a vision, right? So, in the same way
Yes.
that if it's just leadership with this honestly kind of cold, you know, if you just study a definition and you're going to be able to figure out what it is, because while they may not have a word for it, everybody does it, right?
I
You have
know.
a leader of an organization, and so it's to be able to find. And you're right, that's interesting, given the Holy Father's so many unique cross-cultural experiences. He might
Yes.
be able to bring some of these together.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's it's grace that the church has survived 2,000 years. And I've been in Rome many, many times. And when you think about leadership, it's like, oh my goodness, Lord, have mercy on us. Yeah.
When you look
That's
at,
really fascinating, though, Ron. I've never
yeah,
heard that before. I'm going to just
yeah,
think more about that. That's really interesting.
yeah, and ask around.
What are those elements of what a leader does, and how do you articulate that cross culturally? Is really something. Yeah.
He really is something, and that's where the universal church, like I I sometimes lose I often probably, I probably better yet, I never have the perspective of the global church and
Yeah.
how hard it must be
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get
Sure.
across ideas, principles, and thoughts in all these different cultures and languages. Boy,
Yeah.
that's a mind bender.
Yeah. That's right. Who wants to be pope?
Yeah, who wants to be pope? Yeah,
Yeah.
imagine saying, "Oh, yeah, I think I'd like to
Yeah. Yeah.
apply for
Yeah.
pope." Right?
That's right. That's right.
I
No,
don't
I
think
mean,
he's.
and I've often said it that I'm always. I said something related in the beginning. I'm always nervous about people who want to be bishops. You know,
I know.
it's a really profoundly difficult job, you know, and that's just
Oh,
in this one particular area. To imagine try to bring some type of leadership to, and that's where obviously, to go back to where we started, an individual of faith, that Christ needs to be that he is the cornerstone, he is the capstone,
yeah.
and that he's the one that's going to give us a common language of what it means to be able to be a leader or a shepherd, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a devastatingly hard role. And again, the training for it once you become a bishop isn't on leadership either. And so they're not
No.
trained in leaders as associates, seminarians,
Yeah.
associates, pastors,
Yeah.
or bishops. And boy, it's crushing. It can be a crushing role. And these, I just
No.
find so many heroes throughout their whole in our as clergy, just incredible men of sacrifice.
Mm.
And it's always a joy when I get to help and bless them because
Yeah. Yeah. That's
they're
great.
usually incredibly good people with wonderful faith and a great heart. And
Right.
yeah,
And even in
yeah,
that round, the bishop or the priest that will allow you to it. Unfortunately, some are intimidated or nervous. You know, I'm the priest, I should have the answer. I'm the bishop, I should definitely have the answer.
I
And
know.
there's a humility that says, you know, actually, I could probably learn something from somebody else, and I could actually learn who's not a priest, who's not a bishop. There's
Mm.
a good lesson there for us.
Yeah, amen. And one of the things I find the biggest surprise to the people that I work with, and it comes back to what you said earlier, is I have to know who I am, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
believe that this is the right way, because the
Mm-hmm.
primary relation, God's A plan for your university right now is you, in terms of leadership, and
Oh,
so it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of trust there in your relationship with God. And then the rest of us, I often say to people, we got to figure you out because you're God's
yeah,
A plan. So let's figure you out.
yeah,
I
yeah,
need
yeah.
you to be in relationship with Christ. And we're going to build a team around that so that whatever God's saying to you, that's what we bring to life. It's not, to your point, a program that's a cut and paste. It's like, no,
Right.
you're the program. So we got to
That's
figure
absolutely
you
right.
out.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely
Yeah.
right.
So beautiful.
Mm.
Are there any movements or any ideas or things you're experimenting with at Steubenville right now, or maybe they've been going for a while that you're excited about, or that people would want to know about, or
Well, really, we are struggling with what I call first world problems, and that is
Mm.
growth. You know, that
Yeah,
the problems are problems. Like
they
I
really
joke that
are.
they are. I mean, I don't get a lot of empathy from some presidents when I'm talking about, we don't have enough beds for students. It's like, are you seriously? You can, I'd love to have your problems, but the reality is that there are
There's still
problems
problems.
and growth. I mean, anybody who's had, a family and you have add another baby to that, you celebrate that, right? But it's
Mhm.
not without its difficulties. It's not without. So
Amen.
that's really where we're at, is trying to navigate and be faithful to where we are right now, but then also a sense of where the Lord is leading us to. One of the
Yeah.
things that I'm continually, you know, speak to our team here, and that is that ultimately it's not about the Lord just blessing what we're doing, but it's about us being still and quiet and getting a sense of what He's doing, and then go with
Mm.
that. I think all too often we create our plans and our strategies, and we say, "Here, Lord, bless this."
Yes.
I think we need to step back and try to get a sense of that. And one of the things that as a Franciscan, again, we have a unique, I think, a unique spin on this. But before Francis's death, he said to his brothers, "I have done what is mine to do. May Christ show you what is yours." And that's
Mhm.
what we're continuing. I mean, honestly, I get I don't know how many invitations, emails about Franciscans should do this, you should do this, you should do that. Well,
Right.
what is ours to do? So, like, I'm excited that the fact that we're at a place and in a situation that we can begin, not just begin, we've been dreaming, but dreaming. And what is it, that the Lord is asking of us, and how
Mhm.
is it that He's inviting us to expand and to
Yeah.
broaden the impact? We started at the very beginning that Franciscan
Mm.
universities had a great impact, but I think the Lord would have more for us, and we just need to be able to be still, um, be discerning, and then take that step that the Lord has for us, which is an exciting time. It's also a little bit scary.
It's going to require faith.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. You better.
What's That I just getting back to that first world problem issue, and I totally get it. Problems are problems, like, full
Yeah,
stop. Good
that's
problems are
absolutely right.
still problems.
Yep.
With that, you can't service more students without adding to your team over time. And so
Mhm.
how, like, because I've seen, and I do again work in the non um, Christian world as well, non-church world, with high growth companies,
Mhm.
because that can, to your point, create a lot of problems, but it can also create problems with respect to culture within staff and teams.
Mhm.
How do you manage that, or how are you guys intentional about
Yeah.
forming people well as they're coming onto your team so that you can deal with this issue, this wonderful problem over here of growth?
Yeah. I think a couple of things is that, by the fact that we've been doing it for a while, we have a reputation of culture, and that
Yes.
people now we'll post a position and we'll get applications of individuals who have no idea. They just found it on some server board, so they decided to apply.
Yeah.
But the ones that we're actually going to pursue, they have a pretty good understanding who Franciscan University is, and they want to be a
Right.
part of that. And that's a great blessing. It really is
Of course.
that helps it. Every hiring committee we have, one of the individuals is the representative of the mission. So they're the ones who are asking the mission questions of the individual to make sure that the applicant really does understand who we are and what we're about, and making sure that they're a part of that, want to be a part of that. Related to faculty, every faculty member that gets hired has to have an interview with myself. So no faculty member is hired, no executive positions hired without interviewing with me.
Right.
One of the things that when I was here previously at the university working, I was the vice president for mission. And when I became president, one of the things that I had made the decision is that I would never have a vice president for mission. It's it's the president's job. It's the president's job. That
Right.
cannot be advocated anywhere. It's the leader's job to be able to articulate and form and present and animate the mission of the university. So, so to that end, right, that we
That's
really
awesome.
hire for that. We're intentional about that. We're hired at that. And then the process of onboarding is a process that takes a number of months, that we want to make sure that we do the best that we can to make sure
Right.
the individual understands who we are, what they're about, what they're a part of. One of our
Mm.
core charisms at the university's community is that we understand that nobody can do this by themselves, but we actually need one another. So to create an environment and a culture where we rely on one another, we support each other, and to try to bring that new individual into a community that we've created here.
Yeah. Wow. And I hope our listener, like for those of you that are listening along and they're in churches, and we do have turnover from time to time. I think what Father Dave is saying there is so important, because it's just the intentionality of enculturating people well.
Mhm.
Because if you don't enculturate them, they're going to enculturate you, and not with any malice. But if you
Sure,
don't know
sure,
who you
sure,
are, everybody's going to tell you who you should be.
sure. If there's a void there, something's going to fill that void, and we just
Yeah.
want to do our best to make sure there's not that void.
Love it. As we wrap up, here's a question that I've, because everybody, we all have a different vantage point when we're in ministry and in the different parts of the kingdom. And as the president of Steubenville University, when you look out at the church, what are you seeing for trends right now? That is there one thing that concerns you, and is there one thing that gives you that you're excited about?
Yeah, sure. Maybe the thing that concerns me in a different day could be a different concern.
Yeah.
Um, I think probably in the Holy Father, or Pope Francis spoke quite a bit about this, and I think he was absolutely right about it. And that is this Pelagianism, self-reliance that says if I just make up my mind, if I just work hard, I
Mm.
can save myself. I can make everything good and perfect. And this self-reliance, I think, is ultimately, first off, I think it's um, spiritually profoundly flawed. It's Pelagianism, a heresy for a reason, right? So the concern I have is this people, maybe to stick with your theme, that they're working hard, but they're not working smart, right?
Mm.
This sense that I think people don't know how to handle struggle and failure and difficulty, and they just say, I'm going to make up my mind and I'm going to do better and I'm going to be better and I'm going to be better. I'm going to be more holy. I'm going to do all this. Well, ultimately, what has to happen is there actually has to be a surrender. There has to be this place that says, I can't do this. I just can't do this. And I think we live in a spiritual world that says all I need to do is just try harder and I'm going to be able to. No, there needs to be the surrender and recognize that, Paul would say, in my weakness, in my brokenness, in
Mm.
my weakness, I'm straight. So I think that's a concern I have from that
Mm.
perspective. The hope is I get to be around young people, and I love their zeal. I love their passion. I love the fact that they're clueless sometimes. One of the things that's cool about working with young people is they don't know what was done in the past. So
Yeah.
oftentimes as we get older, it's like, well, I did this in the past, it worked. Well, young people don't know that. Now, there's a deficiency in that as well, is that they
Sure.
can say something and it's, well, here's the reason why we don't do this. But they're question. I love questions. Unfortunately, I think we live honestly sometimes in a church, in a world that really doesn't beg the question. And I love the questioning and the ideas, and I love when my team says, or what if, I wonder what it would look like, right? There's
Yeah.
something about that I find really life-giving. So being around young people, there's a zeal about them. And there's some really beautiful things. For as much as people rightly so, take a look at their struggles in in this younger generation. But there's some wonderfully beautiful, exciting, um, energetic. Yeah, it's a great blessing to be around them.
Keeps you young. That's so fun.
Yeah,
Well, Father
yeah,
Dave, thank you so much for joining me on the
it's my
show today.
pleasure.
It's just I've just extracted all kinds of really amazing things that I'm going to be able to think on and apply. And so I appreciate you.
That's my blessing. Thanks, Ryan. Really a pleasure to be with you.
And for all of you that follow along and listen, thank you. It's a joy to be on this journey with you. Thanks for all you do for the kingdom of God, for your local parish or your business. What you do matters. See you next time.
I want to encourage you, as you lead this week, be faithful to God and generous to others. See you next time, and remember, if you're still breathing, you are powered for impact.